I mostly read public domain books here on Glenn Reads Books to You, and they were written a long time ago, so they're usually racist, or sexist, or bigoted, but in there somewhere is a story, and that's why those stories are famous. Other times, I read works from independent authors, and they're delightfully not racist, but they might have adult language or adult situations, like, making sex. So that's your warning, but I'm sure you're grown up enough to handle it. Don't write to me complaining. The hell is this? This isn't what I ordered. I was there. I bought it right there in Germany. Oh, god damn it. All right, sit down, idiot. You caught me just opening a package of something I bought while in Hofgartensternen, Germany. It was a cuckoo clock. I was in the Black Forest, and I thought, I'm in the Black Forest. I might as well buy myself a cuckoo clock. And I ordered it for a lot of money, a lot of euros, since I'm transcontinental. And the goddamn thing, they sent me the wrong clock. They sent me this tiny little turd made of balsa wood with like a dumbass goat. I didn't ask for a goat. Mine has a little boy who's stealing a chicken. And then when the hour chimes, the little bird comes out and does the cuckoo thing, and it sounds all cute and echoey. And then all of a sudden, this little disc with the little boy with the chicken, he starts moving. He's being chased after by a guy with a switch. You always got to beat that kid. You stop stealing my chickens. Oh, I was so happy when I saw that thing. I'm like, yeah, it's ridiculously expensive, but when the hell am I ever going back to Hofgartensternen again? I'm not. The odds of getting to the Black Forest are slim. Plus, that entire town, though beautiful as it was like being in a snow globe. There's the Christmas markets there. About being there is just geared towards buying clocks. They got a big store over here. You're staying at the hotel across the street. Well, across the street over here is a whole place where we just sell cuckoo clocks. Big, gaudy ones, and little tiny ones, and ones with kids stealing chickens. And, you don't want to buy a cuckoo clock? Well, have fun, because every hour on the hour, we have an entire building between your place and our place that's just a giant cuckoo clock. People come out, they're made of wood, and they dance around and it plays music, and everyone stands there and stares and just like goggle. Ooh. It's made for tourists like me. So, of course, after being there and having a giant cuckoo clock for like a building just pumped into your veins, of course, you're going to buy one. So I bought one, and they sent me the wrong one. They sent me one that I could buy in Iowa or some shit. Well, with that, welcome to the Glenn Reads Books to You mansion. It's a fun little bit where I pretend to live in a mansion and not just recording in my basement. This is where I read the hottest public domain books and short stories. This week, we're going to continue to read Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. Want to learn about the author? I hope so. I stole all of it from Wikipedia. Emily Brontë was born July 30th, 1818, and died December 19th, 1848. She was an English novelist and poet who is best known for her only novel, Wuthering Heights, now considered a classic of English literature. She also published a book of poetry with her sisters, Charlotte and Anne, titled Poems by Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell, with their own poems finding regard as poetic genius. She died of tuberculosis, most likely caused by runoff water from a nearby graveyard. You want to hear some fun facts I stole from the History Press? Oh, looks like we ran out of time. I was spending too much time talking about my clocks. Well, with that, why don't we get down to the library, and I can continue reading this book. Okay, why don't you get yourself settled? We're done dipping our toes in the water of the lake of classic literature. It's time to get our whole bodies in and get wet. Chapter 10. A charming introduction to a hermit's life. 4 weeks, torture, tossing, and sickness. Oh, these bleak winds and bitter northern skies and impassable roads and dilatory country surgeons. And this dearth of human, physiognomy? All right. Let's look that one up. We've barely gotten started. I'm already looking up a goddamn word. Physiognomy, a person's facial features or expression, especially when regarded indicative of character, ethnic origin, whatever. Ethnic origin? This book dabbles in the realm of racism. And, worse than all, the terrible moving on, of Kenneth that I did not expect to be out of doors till spring. Mr. Heathcliff has just honored me with a call. About 7 days ago, he sent me a brace of grouse, last of the season. Scoundrel! Exclamation point. Oh, he's not altogether guiltless in this illness of mine, and that I had a great mind to tell him. But alas! Oh, how can I offend a man who was charitable enough to sit at my bedside a good hour and talk on some other subject than pills, draughts, blisters, and leeches? Oh, this is quite an easy interval. I am too weak to read, yet I feel as if I could enjoy something interesting. Why not have up Miss Dean to finish her tale? Now I can recollect her chief incidents as far as she had gone. Yes, I remember her hero had run off and had never heard of for 3 years, and a heroine was married. So he's sick now? I guess we're just diving into that. It's been like a week since the last time I read this. I don't think he went home and then had diarrhea, but I guess he does now. I'll ring. She'll be delighted to find me capable of talking cheerfully. Miss Dean came. It wants 20 minutes, sir, to talking the medicine, she commenced. Away with it, I replied. I desire to have, the doctor says you must drop the powders. Go with all my heart, don't interrupt me. Come, take your seat here. Keep your fingers from the bitter flanks of vials. Draw your knitting out of your pocket. That will do. Now continue the history of Mr. Heathcliff from where you left off to the present day. Did he finish his education in the continent and come back a gentleman? Or did he get a Caesar's place at college or escape to America and earn honors by drawing blood from his foster country? Or make a fortune more promptly on the English highways? Well, he may have done a little in all those vocations, Mr. Lockwood, but I couldn't give my word for any. I stated before that I didn't know how he gained his money. Neither am I aware of the means he took to raise his mind from the savage ignorance into which it was sunk. But with your leave, I'll proceed in my own fashion. If you think it'll amuse you and not weary you, are you feeling better this morning? Much. That's good news. I'm just realizing now that this poor author who is sick constantly, it's completely normal for her to just I'll just be having a great time one night and then be deathly ill the next day, so why not write that in my book? The poor kid. I got Miss Catherine and myself to Thrushcross Grange. Oh, I said it correctly this time. And to my agreeable disappointment, she behaved infinitely better than I dared to expect. Oh, she seemed almost overfond of Mr. Linton, and even to his sister she showed plenty of affection, and they were both very attentive to her comfort, certainly. And it was not the thorn bending the honeysuckles, but the honeysuckles, embracing the thorn. Oh, there were no mutual concessions. One stood erect, and the others yielded. And who can be ill-natured or bad-tempered when they encounter neither opposition nor indifference? I observed that Mr. Edgar had deep-rooted fear of ruffling her humor. Oh, he concealed it from her, but if ever he heard me answer sharply or saw any other servant grow cloudy at some imperious order of hers, he showed some trouble by a frown of displeasure. Never darkened on his own account. He may many a time spoke sternly to me about my pertness, and have heard that the stab of a knife could not inflict a worse pang than he suffered at seeing his lady vexed. Not to grieve a kind master, I learned to be less touchy. He's a touchy-feely little pervert. He's a little sex pest. And for the space of half an hour, the gunpowder lay as harmless as sand, because no fire came near to explode it. Catherine had seasons of gloom and silence now and then, and they were respected by sympathizing silence with her husband, who ascribed them to an alteration in her constitution, produced by her perilous illness, as she was never subject to depression or spirits before. The return of sunshine was welcomed by answering sunshine from him. I believe I may assert that they are really in possession of deep and growing happiness. Burp, it ended, we must be for ourselves in the long run. The mild and generous were only more justly selfish than the domineering. And it ended when circumstances caused each to feel that one's interest was not the chief consideration in the other's thoughts. On a mellow evening in September, I was coming from the garden with a heavy basket of apples, which I had been gathering. It had got dusk, and the moon looked over the high wall of the court, causing undefined shadows to lurk in the corners of numerous projecting portions of the building, and I set my burden on the house steps by the kitchen door. And I lingered to rest and drew in a few more breaths of soft, sweet air, and my eyes were on the moon and my back to the entrance when I heard the voice behind me say, Nellie, is that you? Well, it was a deep voice, foreign in tone, and yet there was something in the manner of pronouncing my name which made it sound familiar, and I turned about to discover he spoke fearfully, for the doors were shut, and I had seen nobody approaching the steps. Something stirred on the porch, and moving near, I distinguished a tall man, dressed in dark clothes, with a dark face and hair. He leaned against the side and held his fingers to the latch, as if intending to open it for himself. Who could it be? I thought. Mr. Earnshaw? No, the voice has no resemblance to his. I've waited here an hour, he resumed, while I continued staring, and the whole of that time all round has been as still as death. I dared not enter. Do you not know me? Look, I am not a stranger. A ray fell on his features. The cheeks were sallow and half covered with black whiskers, and the brows lowering, the eyes deep set and singular. I remembered the eyes. What? I cried, uncertain whether to regard him as a worldly visitor. I raised my hands to him and said, What? You came back? Is that really you? Is it? Yes. Heathcliff, he replied, glancing from me up to the windows, which reflected a score of glittering moons, but showed no lights from within. Are they at home? Where is she? Nellie, are you not glad? You needn't be so disturbed. Is she here? Speak. I want to have one word with her, your mistress. Go, and say some person from Gimmerton desires to see her. How does she take it? I exclaimed. What does she do? The surprise bewilders me. It will put her out of her head, and you are Heathcliff, but altered. Nay, there is no comprehending it. Have you been for a soldier? Go on and carry my message, he interrupted impatiently. I'm in hell till you do. Well, he lifted the latch. I'm in hell till you do. Wow. He lifted the latch, and he's just a dramatic son of a bitch, until I entered. And when I got to the parlor where Mr. and Mrs. Linton were, I could not persuade myself to proceed. At length, I resolved on making an excuse to ask if they would have had the candles lighted, and I opened the door. They sat together in a window whose lattice lay back against the wall, and displayed beyond the garden trees the wild green park, the valley of Gimmerton, with a long line of mist winding nearly at its top. For very soon after you pass the chapel, as you may have noticed, the sow that runs from the marshes joins the beck which follows the bend of the glen. Wuthering heights rose above this silvery vapor, but our old house was invisible. It rather dips down on the other side. Both the room and its occupants and the scene they gazed on looked wondrously peaceful. I shrank reluctantly from performing my errand and was actually going away, leaving it unsaid. After having put my question about the candles, when a sense of my folly compelled me to return and mutter, a person from Gimmerton wishes to see you, ma'am. What does he want? Asked Mrs. Linton. I didn't question him, I answered. Close the curtains, Nellie, she said, and bring up tea. I'll be back again directly. She quitted the apartment. Mr. Edgar inquired carelessly who it was. Someone mistress does not expect, I replied. That Heathcliff. You recollect him, sir, who used to live at Mr. Earnshaw's. What? The Romane? I'm changing the name. Just believe me. The plowboy, he cried. Why did you not say so to Catherine? Hush! You must not call him by those names, master, I said. She'd be gladly grieved to hear you. She was nearly heartbroken when he ran off, and I guess his return will make a jubilee to her. Mr. Linton walked to a window on the other side of the room that overlooked the court. He unfastened it and leant. How would you pronounce that? It's spelled lent, but lean. It's got a T that you just don't say. Old English. A useless form of English. He leaned out. I suppose they were below, for he exclaimed quickly, don't stand there, love. Bring the person in, if it be anyone particular. Ere long, I heard the click of the latch, and Catherine flew upstairs, breathless and wild, too excited to show gladness. Indeed, by her face, you would rather have surmised an awful calamity. "Oh, Edgar, Edgar," she panted, flinging her arms around his neck. "Oh, Edgar, darling, Heathcliff's come back. He is." And she tightened her embrace to a squeeze. "Well, well," cried the husband crossly, "don't strangle me for that. He never struck me as a marvelous treasure. Oh, there's no need to be frantic." "Well, I know you didn't like him," she answered, repressing a little intensity in her delight. "Yet, for my sake, you must be friends now. Shall I, tell him to come up?" "Here," he said. "Into the parlor?" "Where else?" she asked. He looked vexed. It suggested the kitchen was a more suitable place for him. Mrs. Linton eye-rolled with a droll expression, half angry, half laughing, as is fastidious. "No," he added after a while, "I cannot sit in the kitchen. Set 2 tables here. Ellen, for your master and Miss Isabella being gentry, and the other for Heathcliff, and myself being of the lower orders. Would that please you, dear? Will I have a fire lighted elsewhere? If so, give directions, and I'll run down and secure my guest. I'm afraid the joy is too great to be real." Well, she sparked dart off again, but Edgar arrested her. "Oh, you bid him step up," he said, addressing me, and Catherine tried to be glad, without being absurd. "The whole household need not witness the sight of your welcoming a runaway servant as a brother." Well, I descended, found Heathcliff waiting under the porch, evidently anticipating the invitation to enter, and he followed my guidance without a waste of words, and I ushered him into the presence of the master and mistress, whose flushed cheeks betrayed signs of warm talking. But the ladies glowed with another feeling when her friend appeared at the door. She sprang forward, took both his hands, and led him to Linton. And then she seized Linton's reluctant fingers and crushed them into his. Now, fully revealed by the fire of the candlelight, I was amazed more than ever to behold the transformation of Heathcliff. He had grown tall, athletic, a well-formed man, beside whom my master seemed quite slender in youth, like his upright carriage. What is that? An upright, his chest? Suggested the idea of him having been in the army. His countenance, not much older in expression and decision of feature than Mr. Linton's, it looked intelligent and restrained no marks of former degradation. A half-civilized ferocity lurked yet in the depressed brows and eyes full of black fire, but it was subdued, and his manner was even dignified, quite divested of roughness, though too stern for grace. My master's surprise exceeded mine. He remained for a minute at a loss how to address the ploughboy, as he had called him. Heathcliff dropped his sleight of hand and looking at him coolly till he chose to speak. "Sit down, sir," he said at length. "Mrs. Linton, recalling old times, would have me give you a cordial reception, and of course I'm gratified when anything occurs to please her." "And I also," answered Heathcliff, "especially if it be anything in which I have a part. I'll stay an hour or 2 willingly." He took a seat opposite Catherine, who kept her gaze fixed on him as if she feared he would vanish where she were to remove it. He did not raise his to her too often. A quick glance now and then sufficed, but it flashed back each time more confidently. Oh, the undisguised delight he drank from hers. They were too much absorbed in their mutual joy to suffer embarrassment. Not so Mr. Edgar, who grew pale with pure annoyance, a feeling that reached its climax when his lady rose, and stepping across the rug, seized Heathcliff's hands again and laughed like one beside herself. "I think it shall be a dream tomorrow," she cried. "I shall not be able to believe I have seen and touched and spoken to you once more. And yet, cruel Heathcliff, you don't deserve this welcome. To be absent and silent for 3 years and never to think of me." "Well, a little more than you thought of me," he murmured. "I heard of your marriage, Cathy, not long since, and while waiting in the yard below, I meditated this plan just to have one glimpse of your face, a stare of surprise, perhaps, and pretended pleasure, afterwards settle my score with Handley, and then prevent the law by doing execution on myself. Your welcome has put these ideas in my mind, but beware of meeting me with another aspect next time. Nay, you'll not drive me off again. You were really sorry for me, were you? Well, there was cause. I fought through a bitter life since I last heard your voice. You must forgive me, for I struggled only for you." "Catherine, unless you are to have cold tea, please come to the table," interrupted Linton. striving to preserve his ordinary tone and due measure of politeness. Mr. Heathcliff will have a long walk wherever he may lodge tonight, and I'm thirsty. Well, she took her post before the urn. Miss Isabella came, summoned by the bell, and having handed their chairs forward, I left the room. The meal hardly endured 10 minutes. Catherine's cup was never filled, and she could neither eat nor drink. Edgar had made a slop in a saucer and scarcely swallowed a mouthful. Their guest did not protract his stay at that evening above an hour longer. I asked, as he departed, if he went to Gimmerton. No, to Wuthering Heights, he answered. Mr. Earnshaw invited me when I called this morning. Well, Mr. Earnshaw invited him. And he called him Mr. Earnshaw. I pondered this sentence painfully. After he is gone, is he turning out a bit of a hypocrite? And coming into the country to work mischief under a cloak? I mused. I had a presentiment in the bottom of my heart which had better have remained away. About the middle of the night, I was wakened from my first nap by Mrs. Oh, that's right. They used to do second sleeps. And I think we're experiencing this right now. In the middle of the night, awake from my first nap. They used to go to bed when the sun went down. You can't sleep forever, so you wake up in the middle of the night, and you just go to a neighbor's house and just hang out, drink alcohol, and then go back home and go to bed till the sun's up. It's really weird, so we're experiencing that right now. I was awakened from my first nap by Mr. Linton gliding into my chamber, taking a seat at my bedside and pulling me by the hair to rouse me. That's weird, pulling someone's hair. Oh, I cannot rest, Ellen, she said, by way of apology, and I want some living creature to keep me company in my happiness. Edgar is sulky because I'm glad of a thing that does not interest him, and he refuses to open his mouth, except to utter pettish, silly speeches. And he affirmed I was cruel and selfish for wishing to talk when he was so sick and sleepy. Oh, he's always contrived to be sick at the least cross. I gave a few sentences of commendation to Heathcliff, and he, either for a headache or a pang of envy, began to cry. So I got up and left him. What use is in praising Heathcliff to him, I answered. As lads, they had an aversion to each other, and Heathcliff would hate just as much to hear him praised. It's human nature. Let Mr. Linton alone about him, unless you would like an open quarrel between them. But does it not show great weakness? Pursued she. I'm not envious. I never felt hurt at the brightness of Isabella's yellow hair, and the whiteness of her skin, and her dainty elegance, and her fondness of all the family exhibit for her. Even you, Nellie, if we have a dispute sometimes, you back Isabella at once, and I yield like a foolish mother, and I call her, darling, and flatter her to a good temper. Oh, it pleases her brother to see us cordial, and it pleases me. But, Burp, they are very much alike. They are spoiled children, and fancy the world has made for their accommodation. And though I humor both, I think a smart chastisement might improve them all the same. Hey, you're mistaken, Mrs. Linton, said I. They humor you. I know what there would be to do if they did not. You can well afford to indulge their passing whims as long as their business is to anticipate all your desires. You may, however, fall out at last over something of equal consequence on both sides. And then those you term weak, are very capable of being as obstinate as you. Well, then we shall both fight to the death, shan't we, Nellie? She returned, laughing. Yeah, no, I tell you, I have such faith in Linton's love that I believe I might kill him, and he would wish to retaliate. Well, I advised her to value him the more for his affection. I do, she answered, but she didn't resort to whining for trifles. It's childish, and instead of melting into tears because I said that Heathcliff was now worthy of anyone's regard, and it would honor the first gentleman in the country to be his friend, he ought to have said it for me and been delighted from sympathy. Oh, he must get accustomed to him, and he may as well like him, considering how Heathcliff has reason to object to him. But I'm sure he behaved excellently. What do you think he is going to Wuthering Heights? I inquired. He is reformed in every respect. Apparently quite a Christian, offering the right hand of fellowship to his enemies all around. He explained it, she replied. I wonder as much as you, he said. He called to gather information concerning me from you. Supposing you reside there still, and Joseph told Hindley, who came out and fell to questioning him of what he had been doing, and now he had been living, and finally desired him to walk in. Burp. Oh, I'm having quite an explosion of burps. I'm drinking Monster Energy drink, alcoholic. It's like a White Claw, but Monster Energy's getting in on the game. And oh my God, it's just burping me up. I've never drank Monster Energy drink. I don't sit around drinking that stuff. But for some reason, I saw it at the liquor store. I go, haha, that looks fun. Monster Energy drink is alcohol. That'll be weird. It'll be like I'm a 20-year-old. There were some persons sitting at cards. Heathcliff joined them. My brother lost some money to him, and finding him plentifully supplied, he requested that he would come again in the evening, to which he consented. Hindley is too reckless to select his acquaintance prudently. Oh, he doesn't trouble himself to reflect on the causes he might have for mistrusting one whom he has basely injured. But Heathcliff affirms his principal reason for resuming the connection with the ancient persecutor is a wish to install himself in quarters at walking distance from the Grange, and an attachment to the house where we live together, and likewise a hope that I shall, with more opportunities of seeing him there than I could have if he settled in Gimmerton. He means to offer liberal payment for permission to lodge at the Heights, and doubtless my brother's covetousness will prompt him to accept the terms. Oh, he was always greedy. Though what he grasps with one hand, he flings away with the other. That's a nice place for a young man to fix his dwellings in, said I. Have you no fear of the consequences, Mrs. Linton? None for my friend, she replied. His strong head will keep him from danger, a little for Hindley, but he can't be made morally worse than he is, and I stand between him and bodily harm. The event of this signing has reconciled me to God and humanity, and I've risen in angry rebellion against Providence. Oh, I've endured very, very bitter misery, Nellie. If that creature knew how bitter, he'd be ashamed to cloud its removal with idle petulance. It was a kindness for him which induced me to bear it alone. Had I expressed the agony I frequently felt, he would have been taught too long for its alleviation as ardently as I. However, it's over, and I'll take no revenge for his folly, and I can afford to suffer anything hereafter. Should the meanest thing alive slap me on the cheek? I'd not only turn the other, but I'd ask pardon for provoking it. And as proof, I'll go make my peace with Edgar instantly. Good night. I'm an angel. In this self-compliment conviction, she departed, and the success of her fulfilled resolution was obvious on the morrow. Mr. Linton had not only abjured his peevishness, though his spirits seemed still subdued by Catherine's exuberance of vivacity, but he ventured no objection to her taking Isabella with her to Wuthering Heights in the afternoon, and she rewarded him with such a summer of sweetness and affection in return as made the house a paradise for several days, both master and servants profiting from the perpetual sunshine. Heathcliff, Mr. Heathcliff, I should say in the future, used the liberty of visiting that Thrushcross Grange, I can still say it, cautiously at first. He seemed estimating how far its owner would bear his intrusion. And Catherine also deemed it judicious to moderate her expressions of pleasure in receiving him, and he gradually established his right to be expected, and he gained a great deal of the reserve for which his boyhood is remarkable, and served to repress all startling demonstrations of feeling. My master's uneasiness experienced a lull, and further circumstances diverted it into another channel for a space. This new source of trouble sprang from the not-anticipated misfortune of Isabella Linton, evincing a sudden and irresistible attraction toward the tolerated guest. She was at that time a charming young lady of 18, infantile in manners, though possessed of keen wit, keen feelings, and keen temper, too, if irritated. Our brother, who loved her tenderly, was appalled at this fantastic preference, leaving aside the degradation of an alliance with a nameless man, and the possible fact that his property, in default of heirs male, might pass into one's power. He had sense to comprehend Heathcliff's disposition, to know that, though his exterior was altered, his mind was unchangeable and unchanged. And he dreaded that mind. It revolted him. He shrank forebodingly from the idea of committing Isabella to its keeping, and he would have recoiled still more had he been aware of that her attachment rose unsolicited, and was bestowed where it awakened in no reciprocation of sentiment. For the minute he discovered its existence, he laid the blame on Heathcliff's deliberate designing. We had all remarked during some time that Miss Linton fretted and pined over something. But she grew cross and wearisome, snapping at and teasing Catherine continually and at imminent risk of exhausting her limited patience. We excused her, to a certain extent, on the plea of ill health. She was dwindling and fading before our eyes, but one day, when she had been particularly wayward, rejecting her breakfast, complaining that the servants did not do what she told them, that the mistress would allow her to be nothing in the house, and Edgar neglected her, and that she had caught a cold with the doors being left open, and we let the parlor fire go out on purpose to vex her, and 100 yet more frivolous accusations. Oh, Mrs. Linton preeminently insisted that she should get to bed, and having scolded her heartily, threatened to send her to the doctor. Mention of Kenneth caused her to exclaim instantly that her health was perfect, and it was only Catherine's harshness that made her unhappy. How can you say that I'm harsh, you naughty fondling? Cried the mistress, amazed at the unreasonable assertion. Are you surely losing your reason when I have been harsh? Just tell me. Yesterday, sobbed Isabella. And now? Yesterday, said her sister-in-law, on one occasion, at our walk along the moor, you told me to ramble where I pleased, and then you sauntered on with Mr. Heathcliff. And that's your notion of harshness? Said Catherine, laughing. And there's no hint that your company was superfluous? And we didn't care whether you kept with us or not. I merely thought Heathcliff's talk would have nothing entertaining for your ears. Oh, no, wept the young lady. Oh, you wished me away because you knew I liked to be there. Is she sane? Asked Mrs. Linton, appealing to me. Now, I'll repeat our conversation word for word, Isabella, and you point out any charm it could have had for you. I don't mind the conversation, she answered. I wanted to be with, well, said Catherine, perceiving to her hesitate to a complete sentence. With him, I won't always be sent off, she continued, kindling up. You are a dog in the manger, Cathy, and desire no one to be loved but yourself. You're an impertinent little monkey, exclaimed Mrs. Linton in surprise. But I'll not believe this idiocy. It is impossible that you can covet the admiration of Heathcliff, that you can consider him an agreeable person, and I hope I have misunderstood you, Isabella. No, you have not, said the infatuated girl. I love him more than ever you loved Edgar, and you might love me if you could let him. Oh, I wouldn't be for a kingdom then, Catherine declared emphatically. She seemed to speak sincerely. Nellie, help me to convince her of her madness. Tell her what Heathcliff is. An unreclaimed creature without refinement, without cultivation, an arid wilderness of firs and whinstone, and I'd soon put that little canary into the park on a winter's day as recommend you to bestow your heart to him. It's deplorable ignorance of her character, child, and nothing else, which makes that dream enter your head. Pray, don't imagine that he conceals depths of benevolence and affection beneath a stern exterior. He's not a rough diamond, a pearl containing oyster of rustic. Oh, he's fierce, pitiless, wolfish man. And I never say to him, I'll let this or that enemy alone because it would be unegregious or cruel to harm them. I say, let them alone because I should hate them to be wrong. And he'd crush you like a sparrow's egg, Isabella? If he found you a troublesome charge? Oh, I know he could love a Linton, and yet he quite capable of marrying your fortune and expectations. Avarice is growing with him a besetting sin. Here's my picture, and I'm his friend. So much so that had he thought seriously to catch you, I should perhaps have held my tongue and let you fall into his trap. Mrs. Linton regarded her sister-in-law with indignation. For shame, she repeated angrily. You're worse than 20 foes, you poisonous fiend. You won't believe me then, said Catherine. You think I speak from such wicked selfishness? I'm certain you do, retorted Isabella, and I shudder at you. Good, cried the other. Try for yourself, if that be your spirit. I have done, and yield the argument to your saucy insolence. Well, I must suffer to her egotism, she sobbed, as Miss Linton left the room. All is against me. She has blighted my single consolation, and she has uttered falsehoods, didn't she? Mr. Heathcliff is not a fiend. He's an honorable soul, and a true one. Or how could he remember her? Banish him from your thoughts, miss, I said, He's a bird of bad omen. No mate for you. Mrs. Linton spoke strongly, and yet I can't contradict her. She's better acquainted with his heart than I, or anyone besides, and she never would represent him as worse than he is. Honest people don't hide their deeds. How has he been living? How did he get rich? Why is he staying at Wuthering Heights, the house of a man whom he abhors? Oh, they say Mr. Earnshaw is worse and worse since he came, and they sit up all night together continually, and Hindley has been borrowing money on his land, and he does nothing but play and drink. Well, I only heard a week ago it was Joseph who told me I met him at Gibberton, Nellie, he said. Oh, God damn it. We's hay a crowner's quest enow at our folks. On 'em, most getting his finger cut off wi' a hodding to udder fro sticking hislin locally a cough. That's a mice. I hate reading this. I'm moving on. Rare, God, he talks forever. Does he never say now to his fine living amang us? I'm not reading this. I just hate it. I hate it. I, of course, tells that this is a big paragraph. You are leagued with the rest, Ellen, she replied. I'll not listen to your slanders. What malevolence you must have had to wish to convince me that there is no happiness in the world. Whether she would have got over this fancy if left to herself or preserved in nursing it perpetually, I cannot say. She had little time to reflect. The day after, there was a justice meeting in the next town. My master was obliged to attend, and Mr. Heathcliff, aware of his absence, called rather earlier than usual. Catherine and Isabella were sitting in the library on hostile terms, but silent. The latter, alarmed at her recent indiscretion and the disclosure that she had made her secret feelings in a transient fit of passion. The former, a mature consideration, really offended with her companion. And if she laughed again at her pertness, inclined to make it no laughing matter to her, she did laugh as she saw Heathcliff pass the window and was sweeping the hearth, and I noticed the mischievous smile on her lips. Isabella, absorbed in her meditations, or her book, remained till the door opened and was too late to attempt an escape, which she would gladly have done if it had been practical. Come in, that's right, exclaimed the mistress, gaily, pulling a chair to the fire. Here are two people, sadly in need of a third to thaw the ice between them, and you are the very one we should both of us choose. Heathcliff, I'm proud to show you at last somebody that dotes on you more than myself. I expect you to feel flattered. Nay, it's not Nellie. Don't look to her. My poor little sister-in-law is breaking her heart by mere contemplation of your physical and moral beauty. Yeah, it lies in your own power to be Edgar's brother. No, Isabella, you shan't run off, she continued, arresting with feigned playfulness the confounded girl who had risen indignantly. Oh, we're quarreling like cats about you, Heathcliff, and I was fairly beaten in protestations of devotion and admiration, and moreover, I was informed that if I were to have the manners to stand aside, my rival, as she will have herself to be, would shoot a shaft into your soul. It would fix you forever and send my image into eternal oblivion. Catherine, said Isabella, calling up her dignity and disdaining to struggle from the tight grasp that held her, I thank you to adhere to the truth and not slander me. Even in joke, Mr. Heathcliff, be kind enough to bid this friend of yours release me. She forgets that you and I are not intimate acquaintances, and what amuses her is painful to me beyond expression. As the guest answered nothing but took his seat, and looked thoroughly indifferent to what sentiments had cherished concerning him, she turned and whispered an honest appeal for liberty to her tormentor. By no means, cried Mrs. Linton in answer. I won't be named a dog in the manger again. You shall stay. Now then, Heathcliff, why don't you evince satisfaction at my pleasant news? Isabella swears that the love Edgar has for me, is nothing to that she entertains for you. I am sure that she made a speech of the kind, did she not, Ellen? And she has fasted ever since the day before yesterday's walk from sorrow and rage, that I dispatched her out of your society under the idea of it being unacceptable. I think you belie her, said Heathcliff, twisting his chair to face him. She wishes to be out of my society now at any rate. And he stared hard at the object of discourse, as one might do at a strange repulsive animal. A centipede, from the Indies, for instance. With curiosity leads one to examine in spite of the aversion it arises. The poor thing couldn't bear that. She grew white, red in rapid succession, and while tears beaded her lashes, bent the strength of her small fingers to loosen the firm clutch of Catherine, and perceiving that it was fast as she raised one finger off her arm and another closed down, and she could not remove the whole together, she began to use her nails, and their sharpness presently ornamented the detainers with a crescent of red. "There's a tigress," exclaimed Miss Linton, setting her free, and shaking her hand with pain. "Begone, for God's sake, and hide your vixen face? Oh, how foolish to reveal those talons to him! Can't you fancy the conclusions he'll draw? Look, Heathcliff, there are instruments that'll do execution. You must beware of your eyes." "Oh, I'd wrench them off my fingers as I'd never menaced me," he answered, brutally, when the door had closed after her. "But what did you mean by teasing the creature in that manner, Cathy? Were you not speaking the truth, were you?" "I assure you I was," she returned. "Oh, she has been dying for your sake several weeks and raving about you this morning. And pouring forth a deluge of abuse because I represented your failings in plain sight for the purpose of mitigating her adoration. Oh, but don't notice it further. I wish to punish her sauciness, that's all. I like her too well, my dear Heathcliff, to let you absolutely seize and devour her up. And I like her too well to attempt it," he said, except in a very ghoulish fashion. "You hear odd things. If I lived alone with that mawkish, waxen face, the most ordinary would be painting on it white colors of the rainbow and turning blue-black eyes every day or two, and they detestably resemble Linton's. Hear odd things if I lived alone. I'm sorry, I'm rereading this. Most ordinary would be painting on its white face the colors of rainbow. Is he saying he'd beat her? Is that what he's saying? I can't tell. I can't tell if he's saying he'd beat her. God damn these books. Delectably, observed Catherine. They are dove's eyes. Angels. Oh, she's her brother's heir, is she not? He asked after a brief silence. I should not be so sorry to think so, returned her companion. Half a dozen nephews shall erase that title. Please heaven, abstract your mind from the subject at present. You are too prone to covet your neighbor's goods. Remember, this neighbor's goods are mine. If they're mine, there would be none the less for that, said Heathcliff. But though Isabella Linton may be silly, she is scarcely mad, and in short will dismiss the matter as you advise. From their tongues, they did dismiss it, and Catherine, probably from her thoughts. The other, I felt certain, recalled it often in the course of the evening. I saw him smile to himself, grin, rather, and lapse into ominous musing whether Mrs. Linton had occasion to be absent from the apartment. I determined to watch his movements, my heart invariable cleave to the master's in preference to Catherine's side, with reason, I imagine, for he was kind, and trustful, and honorable, and she could not be called the opposite, yet she seemed to allow herself such a wide latitude, and I had little faith in her principles, and still less sympathy for her feelings. I wanted something to happen which might have the effect of freeing both Wuthering Heights and the Grange of Mr. Heathcliff, quietly leaving us as we had been prior to his advent. Oh, his visits were continual nightmares to me, and I suspected to my master also. His abode at the Heights was an impression past explaining, and I felt that God had forsaken the stray sheep there to its own wicked wanderings, and an evil beast prowled between it and the fold, waiting his time to spring and destroy. Well, with that, why don't we take a break? Get out of this stuffy room where my clock sits in a box. I refuse to wind that thing up. I'm not going to use that damn thing. Why don't we go down to the basement where maybe I'll put this clock. If they let me keep it, I'll just stick it in the basement next to the one naked light bulb underneath a folding chair that you get to sit on. And I stand under a different naked light bulb and play my guitar for you as I read to you the latest upcoming novels from Penguin Random House Books. I'll see you down there. Ah, there you are. You made it down here. Don't look so nervous. Take a seat in my folding chair underneath that suspended naked light bulb. I also stand under a different suspended naked light bulb as I play this guitar to you. Do you enjoy? Huh? Yeah. Pretty good, yeah? Anyways, let me tell you about the latest upcoming book from Penguin Random House. It's called Yoda, Dark Rendezvous, Star Wars Legends by Sean Stewart. About Yoda Dark Rendezvous Star Wars Legends? A gripping Clone Wars era adventure featuring a showdown between Grandmaster Yoda and his former apprentice, the sinister Count Dooku. The savage Clone Wars have forced the Republic to the edge of collapse. During the height of battle, one Jedi Knight escapes the carnage to deliver a message to Yoda on Coruscant. It appears that Dooku wants peace and demands a rendezvous. Chances are slim that the treacherous Count is sincere, but with the million lives at stake, Yoda's got no choice. The meeting will take place on Vajun, a planet steeped in evil. How does that work? The challenge could not be more difficult. Can Yoda win back the once promising pupil from the dark side, or will Count Dooku unleash his sinister forces against his former mentor? Either way, Yoda is sure one thing. This battle will be one of the fiercest he'll ever face. That's Yoda, Dark Rendezvous, Star Wars Legends by Sean Stewart. It's part of the Star Wars Legends trilogy? Probably not. Probably like a million books. The category is space opera. Paperback, $17, coming out May 23rd, 2023. You can get it at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Bookshop.org, Hudson Booksellers, Powell's Target, and you know that Star Wars, the franchise, has not gone down the tubes at all from the prequels, which would just shat all over everything. And then when the guy who did the show Lost, or whatever, the director, he's like, I'm going to do the new Star Wars now that Disney bought him. And then he shat all over that too. It's just like he shat over his own show Lost. All of it. It's that they finally made it. They finally hit the mainstream. It's not just for nerds anymore. It's for everyone. When you see it on the shelves of Walmart. Well, with that, I'm angry because I have a thing with Star Wars. I enjoyed Star Wars as a child, and then they've ruined it for the rest of my life. Why don't I go back upstairs where I can stop being so angry, and we can continue reading the rest of this book. Now, good, you're back. Want yourself seated? Enjoy reading Chapter 11. Sometimes, while meditating on these things in solitude, I've gotten up in sudden terror and put on my bonnet to go see how it all is at the farm. I persuaded my conscience that it was a duty to warn him how people talked regarding his ways, and, turn the page. There we go, I'm back. And then I recollected his confirmed bad habits and, hopeless of benefiting him, have flinched from re-entering the dismal house, doubting if I could bear to be taken at my word. One time, I passed the old gate, going out of my way on a journey to Gimmerton. It's about that period of my narrative that has reached a bright frosty afternoon, the ground bare, the road hard and dry, and I came to a stone where the highway branches off onto the moor on your left hand, and a rough sand pillar with the letters WH cut to its north side, on the east, G, and the south, west, TG. It serves as a guidepost to the grange, the heights, and the village. The sun shone yellow on its gray head, reminding me of summer. And I cannot say why, but all at once a gush of child sensations floated in my heart. Hindley and I held it as a favorite spot 20 years before, and I gazed long at the weather-worn block, and stooping down, perceived a hole near the bottom, still full of snail shells and pebbles, which we are fond of storing there with more perishable things, and as fresh as reality, it appeared that I beheld my early playmate seated on the weathered turf, his dark square head bent forward, and they just make this person sound more interesting as the book goes on. He's got a dark square head now, bent forward, and his little hands scooping out of the earth with a piece of slate. "Poor Hindley!" I exclaimed involuntarily. I started. My bodily eye was cheated into momentary belief that the child lifted his face and stared straight into mine. It's the child. I thought it was going to be a Heathcliff, and it vanished in a twinkling, but immediately I felt an irresistible yearning to be at the heights. Superstition urged me to comply with this impulse, supposing he should be dead. I thought, Oh, surely I would die soon. Oh, supposing it were the sign of death. The nearer I got to the house, the more agitated I grew, and on catching sight of it, I trembled every limb. The apparition had outstripped me. It stood looking through the gate. That was my first idea in observing an elf-locked, brown-eyed boy sitting his ruddy countenance against the bars. Oh, further reflection suggested this must be Hareton, my Hareton, not altered greatly since I left him 10 months since. God bless thee, darling, I cried, forgetting instantaneously my foolish fears. Hareton, it's Nellie. Nellie, thy nurse. Oh, he treated out of arm's length and picked up a large flint. I've come to see my father, Hareton, I added, guessing from the action that Nellie, if she lived in his memory at all, was not recognized as one with me. He raised his missile to hurl it, and I commenced a soothing speech, which could not stay ahead of the hand. Oh, and a stone struck my bonnet. Then ensued from the stammering lips of the little fellow a string of curses, which, whether he comprehended them or not, were delivered with practiced emphasis, and distorted his baby features into a shocking expression of malignity. Oh, you may be certain this grieved me more than angered me. Fit to cry, I took an orange from my pocket and offered it to appropriate him. He hesitated, then he snatched it from my hold, as if he fancied I only intended to tempt or disappoint him. And I showed him another, keeping out of reach. Who has taught you these fine words, my baron? B-A-I-R-N? Let's look that one up. It's just Scottish for child. I inquired. The curate? Damn the curate, and thee. Get me that, he replied. Oh, tell us where you got your lessons, and you shall have it, said I. Who's your master? Devil Daddy, was his answer. What'd you learn from Daddy? I continued. He jumped at the fruit, and I raised it higher. What does he teach you? I asked. Not, said he, but to keep out of his gate. Daddy cannot bide me, because I swear at him. Ah, and the devil teaches you to swear at Daddy, I observed. Nay, he drawled. Who then? Heathcliff. Oh, and I asked if he liked Mr. Heathcliff. He answered again. That was weird. It says, I asked if he liked Mr. Heathcliff, but that's in quotes, as if she's saying it to him, her thoughts. That was kind of a weird moment. Anyways, he answered. It's probably I. Whatever. Desiring to have his reasons for liking him, I could only gather the sentences. Oh, I know't. He pays Dad back what he gives to me. He curses Daddy for cursing me. He says I mun do as I will. And the curate does not teach you to read and write then? I pursued. No, I was told the curate should have this. Teeth dashed down his throat. He stepped over the threshold, and Heathcliff had promised that. I put the orange in his hand and bade him tell his father that a woman named Nellie Dean was waiting to speak with him by the garden gate. Then he went up the walk and entered the house, but instead of Hindley, Heathcliff appeared on the doorstones. Oh, and I turned directly and ran down the road as hard as I ever could race, making no halt until I gained the guidepost, and feeling as scared as if I had raised a goblin. This is not much connected with Miss Isabella's affair, except that it urged me to resolve further on mounting vigilant guard, and doing my utmost to check the spread of such bad influence at the Grange, even though I should wake a domestic storm by thwarting Mr. Linton's pleasure. But the next time Heathcliff came, my young lady chanced to be feeding some pigeons in the court. And she had never spoken a word to her sister-in-law for 3 days, but that she had likewise dropped her fretful complaining, and we found it a great comfort. Heathcliff had not the habit of bestowing a single unnecessary civility on Miss Linton. I knew. Now, as soon as he beheld her, his first precaution was to take a sweeping survey of the front of the house. Oh, and I was standing by the kitchen window, but I drew out of sight. Anyway, he stepped across the pavement to her, and he said something, and she seemed embarrassed and desirous of getting away to prevent it, and he laid his hand on her arm. Oh, she averted her face, and he apparently put some question which she had no mind to answer. There was another rapid glance at the house, and supposing himself unseen, the scoundrel had the impudence to embrace her. Judas, Traitor, I ejaculated. Ah, you're a hypocrite too, are you? A deliberate deceiver. Who is? Nellie, said Catherine's voice at my elbow, and I had been over-intent on watching the pair outside to mark her entrance. Your worthless friend, I answered, warmly. The sneaking rascal yonder. Oh, he has caught a glimpse of us, and he is coming in. I wonder, will he have the heart to find a plausible excuse for making love to Miss when he told you he hated her? Miss Linton saw Isabella tear herself free and then run into the garden. A minute later, Heathcliff opened the door, and I couldn't withhold giving some loose to my indignation. But Catherine angrily insisted on silence and threatened to order me out of the kitchen if I dared to be so presumptuous as to put in my insolent tongue. To hear you! People might think you were the mistress, she cried. You want setting down in your right place? Heathcliff, what are you about, raising this stir? I said you must let Isabella alone, I beg you, unless you are tired of being received here and wish Linton to draw the bolts against you. Oh, God forbid he should try, answered the black villain. And I detested him just then. God keep him meek and patient. Every day I grow madder after sending him to heaven. Oh, hush, said Catherine, shutting the inner door. Don't vex me. Why have you disregarded my request? Did she come across to you on purpose? Well, what is it to you? He growled. I have a right to kiss her, if she chooses. You have no right to object. And I'm not your husband. You needn't be jealous of me. Well, I'm not jealous of you, replied the mistress. I'm jealous for you, Clear your face. You shan't scowl at me. If you like Isabella, you shall marry her. But do you like her? Tell the truth, Heathcliff. There, you won't answer. I'm certain you don't. Oh, and would Mr. Linton approve of his sister marrying that man, I inquired. Oh, Mr. Linton should approve, returned the lady decisively. He might spare himself the trouble, said Heathcliff. I could do as well without his approbation. And as to you, Catherine, I have a mind to speak a few words now. While we are at it, I want to be aware that I know you have treated me infernally. Infernally, do you hear? And if you flatter yourself that I don't perceive it, you're a fool. And if you think I can be consoled into sweet words, you're an idiot. And if you fancy I'll suffer out of revenge, I'll convince you the contrary in a very little while. Meantime, thank you for telling me your sister-in-law's secret. I swear I'll make the most of it and stand you aside. What new phase of character is this? Exclaimed Mrs. Linton in amazement. I've treated you infernally, and you'll take your revenge? Oh, how will you take it? Ungrateful brute. How have I treated you infernally? Oh, I seek no revenge on you, replied Heathcliff, less vehemently. That's not the plan. The tyrant grinds down his slaves, and they won't turn against him. They crush those beneath them. You are welcome to torture me to death for your amusement. Only allow me to amuse myself a little in the same style, and refrain from insult as much as you're able. Having leveled my palace, don't erect a hovel and complacently admire but your own charity and give me that for my home. If I imagined you really wished me to marry Isabel, I'd cut my throat. Oh, the evil is that I'm not jealous, is it? Cried Catherine. Well, I won't repeat my offer of a wife. It is as bad as offering Satan a lost soul. Your bliss lies, like this, in inflicting misery. You prove it. Edgar is restored from the ill temper he gave way at your coming, and I begin to be secure and tranquil, and you restless. Oh, to know it is at peace, appear resolved on exiting a quarrel. A quarrel with Edgar, if you please. Heathcliff, and deceive his sister, you'll hit on exactly the most efficient method of avenging yourself on me. The conversation ceased. Miss Linton sat down by the fire, flushed and gloomy. The spirit of which served her was growing intractable. She could neither lay or control it. He stood on the hearth with folded arms, brooding on his evil thoughts. And in the position I left him to seek the master, who was wondering what kept Catherine below so long. Ellen, said he, when I entered, have you seen your mistress? Yes. She's in the kitchen, sir, I answered. She's sadly put out by Mr. Heathcliff's behavior, and indeed, I do think it's time to arrange his visits on another footing. There's harm in being too soft, and now it's come to this. And I related the scene in the court. Oh, and as I dared, the whole subsequent dispute. And I fancied that it could not be very prejudicial to Mrs. Linton, I can say that, unless she made it so afterwards by assuming the defensive for her guest. Edgar Linton Linton had difficulty in hearing me to the close. His first words revealed that he did not clear his wife of blame. Oh, this is insufferable, he exclaimed. It is disgraceful that she should own him for a friend and force his company on me. Call me 2 men out of the hall. Ellen, Catherine shall linger no longer to argue with the low ruffian. I have humored her enough. He descended, and bidding the servants wait in the passage, went, followed by me, to the kitchen. Its occupants had recommenced in their angry discussion. Mrs. Linton, at least, was scolding them with renewed vigor. Heathcliff had moved to the window and hung his head, somewhat cowed by her violent rating, apparently. He saw the master first. He made a hasty motion that she should be silent, which she obeyed, abruptly on discovering the reason for his intimidation. "How is this?" said Linton, addressing her. "What notion of propriety have you to remain here, after the language which has been held to you by the blackguard? Oh, I suppose because his ordinary talk, you think of nothing of it, and you are habituated to its baseness, and perhaps imagine I can get used to it too." "Have you been listening at the door, Edgar?" asked the mistress in a tone particularly calculated to provoke her husband, implying both carelessness and contempt for his irritation. Heathcliff, who had raised his eyes at the former speech, gave a sneering laugh at the latter on purpose, and seemed to draw Mr. Linton's attention to him. He succeeded, but Edgar did not mean to entertain him with any high flights of passion. I've been so far foreboding with you, sir," he said quietly. "Not that I was ignorant of your miserable, degraded character, but I felt that you were only partly responsible for that, and Catherine, wishing to keep your acquaintance, I acquiesced foolishly. Your presence is a moral poison that should contaminate the most virtuous for that cause and to prevent the worst consequences. I shall deny you hereafter admission into this house and give you notice now that I require your instant departure. 3 minutes delay will render it involuntary and ignominious. I'm looking that one up. I know what the word is. For some reason, I can't pronounce it right now. Ignominy. All right, fine. Heathcliff measured the height and breadth of the speaker with an eye full of derision. "Cathy, this lamb of yours threatens like a bull," he said. "Oh, it's in danger of splitting its skull against my knuckles. Oh, by God, Mr. Linton, I'm morally sorry that you are not worth knocking down." Oh, my master glanced towards the passage and signed me to fetch the men. Oh, he had no intention of hazarding a personal encounter. I obeyed the hint, but Mr. Linton, suspecting something, followed. And when I attempted to call them, she pulled me back. Oh, Mrs. Linton, she pulled me back, slammed the door, and locked it. "Fair means," said she, in answer to her husband's look of angry surprise. "If you have not the courage to attack, I'll make an apology or allow yourself to be beaten." Wow, she wants these guys to go buck wild in this room. "Oh, it will correct you of feigning more valor than you possess." "No, I'll swallow the key before you shall get it. I'm delightfully rewarded for my kindness to each. After constant indulgence of one's weak nature and the other one's bad one, I earn for thanks 2 samples to blind ingratitude. Stupid to absurdity. Edgar, I was defending you and yours, and I wish Heathcliff may flog you sick for daring to think an evil thought of me." It did not need the medium of flogging to produce that effect on the master. Oh, he tried to wrest the key from Catherine's grasp. For safety, she flung into the hottest part of the fire, whereupon Mr. Edgar was taken with a nervous trembling. Oh, he's a big puss. And his countenance grew deadly pale. For his life he could not avert that excess of emotion. Mingled anguish and humiliation overcome him completely. He leant, we learned this last time, leaned back on the chair and covered his face. Oh, what a giant puss. "Oh, heavens! In old days this would win you knighthood," exclaimed Mrs. Linton. Yeah, we are vanquished. We are vanquished. Heathcliff would soon as lift a finger at you, and the king would march his army against a colony of mice. Cheer up. You shan't be hurt. Your type is not a lamb. It's a sucking leveret." Okay, we're looking up leveret. Some type of animal? A young hare in its first year. It's from Middle English. God damn it, dead language. "Oh, I wish you joy in the milk-blooded coward, Cathy," said her friend. "I compliment you on your taste, and that is the slavering, shivering thing that you preferred to me. Oh, I would not strike him with my fist. I'd kick him with my foot, and experience a considerable satisfaction. Is he weeping, or is he going to faint from fear?" The fellow approached and gave the chair on which Linton rested a push. He better have kept his distance. My master quickly sprang erect and struck him full in the throat with a blow that would have leveled a slighter man. Punching someone in the throat makes them choke instantly. I learned this from my uncle, who used to be a Colorado State Patrolman. He said that if he picks up a bunch of drunk white kids, he worked in a small town, Colorado, a bunch of drunk white kids, and one of them was like sitting in the front seat and he's being loud and screaming and like, yeah, screw you, pig, and that kind of thing. He would just take his fingertips and just like tap the person's throat, and they instantly start choking up. So this guy just punched Heathcliff in the throat. So I imagine he's going to die. Let's see what happens. Full-on throat blow that would have leveled a slighter man. It took his breath for a minute. What? And while he choked, okay, here we go, like I said, Mr. Linton walked out by the back door of the yard and from thence to the front entrance. Out the back door? So there's two doors? Oh, so she wasn't really locking anyone anywhere. Apparently there's another door and he just walked out of it. Just kind of sauntered out. Okay, well, there goes that pageantry. The front entrance. There! You're done with coming here, cried Catherine. Get away now. He'll return with a brace of pistols and half a dozen assistants. If he did overhear us, of course, he'd never forgive you. You've played me an ill turn, Heathcliff. Oh, but go make haste. I'd rather see Edgar at bay than you. She says, as he's probably choking to death right now. Do you suppose I'm going to go with that blow burning in my gullet? He thundered. Oh, he's talking right now. By hell no, so he's fine. By hell no. I'll crush his ribs in like a rotten hazelnut before I cross the threshold. But if I don't floor him now, I shall murder him sometime. So as you value his existence, let me get at him. He's not coming, I interposed, framing a bit of a lie. There's a coachman and the two gardeners. You'll surely not wait to be thrust into the road by them. Each has a bludgeon, and Master will very likely be watching from the parlor windows to see that they fulfill their orders, like a big puss. The gardeners and coachmen were there, but Linton was with them, and they already entered the court. Heathcliff, on second thoughts, resolved to avoid a struggle against three underlings. He seized the poker, smashed the lock from the inner door. Wait, how did one person leave, but now Heathcliff is smashing the lock like he's still locked in the room? I'm confused on this scene. Am I just mixing it up? Maybe I'm just mixing it up. Sometimes you read these things out loud and your brain kind of wanders. Maybe I missed something. Smashed the lock from the inner door and made his escape as they tramped in. Just go out the door that he was in. Mrs. Linton, who was very much excited, bade me accompany her upstairs. She did not know my share in contributing to the disturbance, and I was anxious to keep her in ignorance. I'm nearly distracted, Nellie, she exclaimed, throwing herself on the sofa. 1,000 Smith's hammers are beating in my head. Tell Isabella to shun me. This uproar is owing to her, and should she or anyone else aggravate my anger at present, I shall get wild. Oh, and Nellie, say to Edgar, if you see him again tonight, that I'm in danger of being seriously ill, and I wish it may prove true. Oh, he's started to distress me shockingly. I want to frighten him. Besides, he might come and begin a string of abuse or complainings, and I'm certain I should recriminate, and God knows where we should end. Will you do so, my good Nellie? You were aware that I am in no way blamable in this matter. Oh, what possessed him to turn listener? Heathcliff's talk is outrageous, but after you left us, but I could soon diverted him from Isabella, and the rest meant nothing. Now all is dashed and wrung by the fool's craving to hear evil of self. That haunts some people like a demon. And had Edgar had gathered our conversation, he would never have been worse for it. Really, when he opened me on that unreasonable tone of displeasure after I had scolded Heathcliff till I was hoarse for him, I did not care hardly that they did what they did to each other, especially as I felt that, however the scene closed, we should not be driven asunder, for nobody knows how long. Oh, well, if I cannot keep Heathcliff for my friend, if Edgar will be mean and jealous, I will break their hearts by breaking my own. That will be a prompt way of finishing all, when I am pushed to extremity. Oh, but it's a deed to be reserved for a forlorn hope. I'd not like take Linton by surprise with it. Oh, this point has been discreet in dreading to provoke me, and you must represent the peril of quitting that policy, and remind him of my passionate temper, verging, when kindled, on frenzy. I wish you could dismiss the apathy out of the countenance and look rather more anxious about me. Oh, the stolidity with which I received these instructions was, no doubt, rather exasperating, for they were delivered in perfect sincerity. But I believed a person who could plan the turning of her fits and passions to account beforehand might, by exerting her will, manage to control herself tolerably, even while under the influence. But while I did not wish to frighten, in quotes, her husband, as she had said, and multiply his annoyances for the purpose of serving his selfishness, therefore I had said nothing when I met the master coming toward the parlor, but I took the liberty of turning back to listen whether they would resume their quarrel together. He began to speak first. Remain where you are, Catherine, said he, without any anger in his voice, but with much sorrowful despondency. I should not say I am neither come to wrangle or to be reconciled, but I wish to learn whether, after this evening's events, you intend to continue your intimacy with— Oh, for mercy's sake, interrupted the mistress, stamping her foot. Oh, for mercy's sake, let us hear no more of it now. Your cold blood cannot be worked into a fever. Your veins are full of ice water, but mine are boiling. At the sight of such chilliness makes them dance. To get rid of me, answer my question, preserve, Mr. Linton. You must answer it, and that violence does not alarm me. I have found that you can be as stoical as anyone. When you please, will you give up Heathcliff hereafter, or will you give me up? Is it impossible for you to be my friend and his at the same time? And I absolutely require you to know which you choose. I require to be let alone, exclaimed Catherine furiously. I demand it. Don't you see I can scarcely stand? Edgar, you leave me. She rang the bell till it broke with a twang, and I entered leisurely. It was enough to try the temper of a saint. Oh, such senseless, wicked rages. There she lay, dashing her head against the arm of the sofa, and grinding her teeth so that you might fancy that she would crash them to splinters. Mr. Linton stood looking at her in sudden compunction and fear, and she told me to fetch some water. She had no breath for speaking, and I brought a glass full. She would not drink, and I sprinkled it on her face. What the hell's going on? And in a few seconds, she stretched herself out stiff and turned up her eyes, while her cheeks, at once blanched and livid, assumed the aspect of death. Linton looked terrified. There is nothing in the world the matter, I whispered. I did not want him to yield, though I could not help being afraid in my heart. She's got blood on her lips, he said, shuddering. Never mind, I answered tartly, and I told him how he had resolved, previous to his coming, of exhibiting a fit of frenzy. I had incautiously gave the account aloud, and she heard me, for she started up, her hair flying over her shoulders, her eyes flashing, the muscles the muscles of her neck and arms standing out preternaturally. I made up my mind for broken bones, at least, but she only glared about for an instant, then she rushed from the room. The master directed me to follow. I did, and to her chamber door. She hindered me from going further by securing it against me. She never offered to descend to breakfast the next morning. I went to ask whether she would have come up. No, she replied, tempestuously. I can't say that, that's fine. The same question was repeated at dinner and tea, and again on the morrow after, and received the same answer. Mr. Linton, on his part, spent his time in the library and did not inquire concerning his wife's occupations. Isabella and he had an hour's interview, during which he tried to elicit from her some sentiment of proper horror for Heathcliff's advances. But he could make nothing of her evasive replies, and was obliged to close the examination unsatisfactorily, adding, however, a solemn warning that if she were so insane as to encourage that worthless suitor, it would dissolve all bonds of a relationship between herself and him. Well, with that, we just finished that chapter. That's dramatic. Why don't we go down to the smoking room where we can have a Camel cigarette and talk about what we just read. Now, there you are. Why don't you get yourself settled? Yeah, I hung the clock up. The clock I don't want. I just want a clock, any clock, from me being in the Black Forest to be up. Oh, God damn it. I forgot my wife keeps putting these birds here in the smoking room. You know that we've gone through generations of parakeets that my wife keeps putting in the smoking room? They all die because of all the cigarette smoke and the tobacco and stuff. So, this is a new generation of birds, not knowing what their fate betells them. That's not a word. Anyways, so I put the clock up. The clock's up. I don't like this clock. It's a dumb clock, but I want any clock up there to compete with these birds. It's a cuckoo clock, so I'm expecting the little bird to come out and do the cuckoo thing, and then maybe these birds will shut the hell up and just accept their lung cancerous fate. Well, with that, what do we read? Well, in chapters 10 and 11, guys, Heathcliff is back, and he's got money. He shows up on Catherine and Hindley's door to say hi, and Nellie is pretty uncomfortable about it. Oh, she's got good reason to be, since she saw him take off in anger, and now he's back with mysterious wealth and a mysterious past. Oh, where before Heathcliff was noble in how he tolerated his abuse, now he's charismatic and kind of evil about it. Oh, he knows that Isabella is into him, and he doesn't seem to care, because he doesn't seem to care about people, he just cares about Catherine. Oh, and he knows that Catherine's a little too much overjoyed that he's back, and but it makes him resentful. And then there's Hindley. Oh, he hates Hindley. And I can't get too much into him since this episode got pretty long, and I couldn't read all the chapters I wanted to, but there's a lot of debate on if Heathcliff is the hero or the villain in this story because of how he treats everyone. But we do learn in chapter 10 that he is openly talking about how he has plans for revenge. And even in chapter 11, when Catherine locks him in the room, he's like, I got revenge plans. Like, oh, not against me. He goes, oh, yeah, no, yeah, I like you, not against you, but I got revenge plans. So we already know that he's starting small by teaching Hareton how to swear. And then going after Isabella. Catherine, though she used to be a turd, has everyone's best interests at heart when she locks Edgar, Heathcliff, and herself in a room to have it out. Edgar acts like a baby and runs off to get help after punching him in the throat, which I said earlier, if you full-on punch someone in the throat, they kind of just die, is what I've always heard. So don't ever punch someone in the throat. Like I said, if you tap someone with your fingertips in the throat, it makes them choke up and get whatever. So he gets punched in the throat, and he just kind of goes, anyways, Catherine, I love you. So that was kind of weird. But Edgar runs off like a baby to go get help. And then later Edgar confronts Catherine that it's Heathcliff for me. And then he goes on, and then she locks herself in her room, and she won't come out for days. So barring people from either entering or leaving a room is kind of a theme with her. Then Edgar tells Isabella that she can't marry Heathcliff, so things are coming to a head. So there you go. Things are getting hot. Getting real hot over here. And so with that, I guess I'll be back next week. And maybe if I'm lucky, I'll have the right cuckoo clock that you can actually hear to signal that the goddamn show is done. So I guess maybe I'll see you next week. And if I do, compliment my clock. I worked real hard to get it here. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you then. Well, it appears you found me in the part of the podcast I hate the most, where I tell you all about the places on the internet where you can find me. You can tell I hate this because of the sound effects making it sound like a stormy night in the drawing room of the damned. Now, there's that. Are you cool? I like cool people. It's the reason why I got involved in this business to begin with, just to meet cool people. Not losers. So if you're cool, feel free to go over to my website, nuzzlehouse.com, which just points you to my link tree. Everything's on the link tree. Just go to the link tree if you want to see where I am. And of course, link tree has the dumbest URL in the world. linktr.ee/nuzzlehouse. It's the dumbest thing. If you go to nuzzlehouse.com, it's just going to reroute you over there. After giving you some weird error about it not being secure, I hate it. I hate the internet. But if you go there, you get to hear some of the other stuff that I and my wife work on, like the Radio Mystery Theater show, where we try to recreate the same show that used to be on in the 70s, but they don't make any episodes anymore. So we make our own, and we just steal all their commercials. And also, just stay in the curious mind, we made a Christmas album. If you go to our link tree, you can see that we made a Christmas album. It's the first thing we did after getting married, which I think everyone should do when they get married, is start talking about the Christmas album they're going to make. And we're working on a new show where we give relationship advice by reading paranormal smut. And since I think you might be cool, you can always just email me directly, glenn.nuzzles@gmail.com. But don't email if you're a nerdling or a dork. Now, back to business. Can't believe I drank all of them already. There's got to be one left.